So we're talking about flaming guitar today, aren't we, Karl?
Yeah, Brad. Yes, we are. Comer the Doof Warrior is one of the most memorable characters from Mad Max Fury Road, and it's really not hard to see why. He looks like a member of Slipknot, got Ghost Rider's powers, and he spends all 10 minutes of his screen time shredding the shit out of a giant guitar that shoots flames. A guitar, it turns out, actually did work and shoot real flames because nobody on set had the balls to tell director George Miller that a guitar flamethrower hybrid was an unfeasible idea to make work on film.
George Miller, the director.
Yes.
He's one of the ones who loves practical effects, isn't
Yeah. People not familiar with, the filmography of George Miller. He's a director mostly famous for directing, Mad Max and Happy Feet, of all films, for some reason. And he's a big proponent... No, I'm not making that up. That's a real thing. Look this up. George Miller's, filmography goes on IMDb. It goes, Mad Max 2, a 20-year break where he didn't do fuck all, Happy Feet 1 and 2, Mad Max Fury Road. I'm not even kidding, it's some stupid shit. He went from Happy Feet to this, but that's besides the point. He's a big proponent of practical effects, except for when he's making CGI penguin films, I guess. And according to him, 90% of the crazy shit you see in Mad Max Fury Road was accomplished for real with practical effects, with the other 10% being CGI used to enhance those scenes to add things that would have been unfeasible or dangerous for the stunt actors taking part.
Yeah, from the behind-the-scenes things I've seen, it's mostly like matte paintings and adding the occasional particle fire and stuff.
Yeah, it's stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily notice and wouldn't distract you from the action taking place on scene, which I guess is the point of fucking CGI, isn't it? It's there to enhance the action you're seeing on screen. So say, for example, you watch a car crash in Mad Max Fury Road, that's a real car that's really crashing. It's just they use CGI to make the crash look more impressive by adding flames and things like that.
So considering that 90% ratio, I'm assuming that it was Miller's insistence that made all of it practical effects.
Yeah, and according to a long-time collaborator of his called Colin Gibson, which is kind of ironic given that the most famous thing he made in Mad Max is the big giant flaming guitar, but I digress. Miller has a particular dislike for, I quote, things that don't work.
What do you mean he has a dislike for things that don't work?
Well, Miller is known to really, really just not like props that don't function the way they're supposed to on screen. And as a result, he insists on all the props in his films working the way they're supposed to. So knowing this, I'm going to guess that Gibson shit all kinds of bricks when he was hired to work on Mad Max Fury Road and was told by Miller that he had to design and make the doof wagon.
What in God's name is a doof wagon?
A doof wagon, Brad, and for people at home, is a giant metal monstrosity that functions in the context of the film as a rolling PA system that also has a giant flaming guitar on top of it.
I've always wondered, what's the point of the guitar?
What, the guitar on top?
Yeah.
Other than being sick, awesome and shooting flames.
And wasting fuel?
Yeah, that's the thing, is it? A lot of people say, oh, the doof wagon's awesome, but why does it shoot flames? Isn't fuel supposed to be the most valuable commodity in the Mad Max universe? So I'll explain that now if anyone's ever wondered that. In the art book for the film, they explain that the function of the doof wagon is the same function that, horn blowers and drummer boys served in wars of old. And it's to communicate orders to the other troops around, or in this case, the cars around. So how do you do that when all they can hear is the roar of an engine? Well, you have a wall of speakers, and you have something very immediate and visually distinct, like fire. And that's what the Doof Warrior is doing. He's communicating the orders to the other cars. So they can look in their rear view mirror and just see a specific pattern of flames. Go, oh, we're supposed to attack, we're supposed to turn left, we're supposed to drive faster, that sort of thing. And obviously, we don't know what those patterns are, but the War Boys do in the context of the film.
So he could play a particular tune and that would issue a particular order to a certain
and that's
group.
The same way back in the days of drummer boys, a specific beat would tell soldiers to march in a certain way or to go a certain way.
It's actually a really clever idea.
It is, isn't it? We've got this army, basically, of people who can't hear me. How are we supposed to, shout over the roar of the engines of their giant cars? We can't. Well, what about if we had a giant wall of speakers? Okay, but words are going to get jumbled, again, roar of the engines. Okay, let's have something simple that cuts through all that. A chugging riff from a sick, awesome guitar. Okay, what about people who still can't hear us? Well, we need something visual and easy to spot, like fire. And in a worse film, with a worse director, they'd have made that explicitly clear, but they don't in Mad Max, and I fucking love that about it. So there's so many little things in that film that you just hear and go, hang on, and you can draw conclusions from it on your own. There's a line that Max says, where he goes, there's nothing out there. I drove for 10 days and saw nothing but salt flats. And you find yourself thinking, well, what do you mean? How can you drive for 10 days and see nothing at all? And it's oh, that's the ocean. is talking about the ocean. The oceans have boiled away. And they don't say the oceans have boiled away, because it's like, but that line there gives you a hint to the fact they have. Because where else would you drive for 10 days straight on perfectly flat land and not see anything? The oceans, and they see like boats and stuff stuck in the sand.
Films nowadays always try and spoon feed you every
Yeah,
little bit
and George
of
Miller's like,
information.
no, fuck that, I'm just going to make a 2-hour-long chase movie where there's no words and everything in it is inferred from context. Like the bullet farmers. It's like, oh, how do you farm bullets? It's, oh, right, they're on like the site of an old war or something like that, or a battle that took place many years ago everyone's forgot about, and they're digging up bullets from the ground, and that's why they're the bullet farmers. Or the fact that I think in, maybe it might be the game or it might be the film, I'm not sure, but they worship the shell symbol. Like, do you know the symbol for shell?
Yeah.
And you think, oh, why would they? Oh, because every time they find that symbol, they find oil and gas. It's just little things like, it's like, yeah, that's nice. That's a nice, because that makes you feel smart when you figure it out. I like that. Thanks, George Miller. Happy Feet was great too.
I actually can't believe that Happy Feet and Mad Max are directed by the same guy.
They are, and I'm kind of disappointed now that like George Miller didn't bring some elements from Mad Max into Happy Feet. Because what's the plot of Happy Feet? It's, oh, the penguins all communicate through singing. And then that one penguin who can't sing communicates through dancing, through the rhythmic percussion of like his little tap dancing feet, just like the Doof Warrior.
So you saying that penguin should have been the Doof Warrior for the Penguin Army?
He's the Doof Warrior, the penguin army. So what you got to do now, Brad, is, because you know it's happening, you're going to Photoshop the penguin from Happy Feet with the Doof Warrior's head and guitar, and give his little flippers on the guitar. Thing is though, could a penguin play guitar? He ain't got fingers on it.
Well, yeah, but he could press one fret and...
Do you know what he could do? He could play slap bass. The penguin could play... Do you know what you need to do now?
Yeah.
Fuck that Photoshop and start, make another one. Put the Doof Warrior, a clip of the Doof Warrior, but Photoshop the penguin from Happy Feet on his head, give him little flippers, and change the soundtrack so it's the opening from Higher Ground by Red Hot Chili Peppers. From that proper awesome 6 slap bass solo. And that's what we're going to do. Enjoy. Getting back to the Doof Wagon, despite George Miller's usual insistence on props he has in his films working as advertised, initially the Doof Wagon didn't work at all.
What do you mean it didn't work?
I should probably clarify, because yeah, it did drive, so it functioned as a car, but it didn't function as I mentioned there, a rolling PA system, because none of the speakers on it worked, and the guitar on top didn't have any strings or pickups on it. It only had the mechanism to shoot the flames. Because like the people making it thought, well, isn't the sound to be pumped in later? So we don't really need to, like, you know, play music through it. Yeah, George Miller didn't agree. According to people who were on set on the day George Miller first laid eyes on the Doof Wagon, while the director was impressed with the overall design of the vehicle itself, he was somewhat disappointed when he found out it didn't work.
So do we know who had to break the news to poor little George Miller that the guitar wasn't working?
We don't, but we do know that literally the first thing George Miller did after seeing the Doof Wagon in all its glories, he turned to a member of the design team all excited and going, "Can you plug it in? I'd love to see it work." And someone walked over and put their hand on his shoulder and like, "We're sorry, George, we can't do that because it's not a real guitar and none of those speakers are real." I'm just imagining that he just turned around with like the face of Puss in Boots from Shrek like that. And all the design team were looking at it going, "Oh no, we can't, no, he's doing the face." And I'm imagining that's how he got all the practical effects done. Because some of the stunts in that movie, I think the one of the giant people on the big poles going backwards and forwards, initially, like George Miller was told, that can't be done. This is too dangerous. We can't have people on giant poles on the back of cars going at 40 miles an hour through a desert with fire everywhere. And George Miller's like, "Oh, okay then. If you really think it's too dangerous," and he did like he did the face. And what they did is they found people, I think, from Cirque du Soleil or from some circus performers who could do it in real life without it being too dangerous, and they got those guys in. And I think they had CGI footage of it, and they got rid of the CGI footage and put the real shit in, just because George was like, the real stuff's gonna look better. The real stuff's better. And I'm hoping that's what he did every time someone told him, "George, it can't be done." He's like, just turns to them like, "Oh, are you sure? Are you sure the guitar can't work like a real guitar?" And there was like, oh, look at his little face. He's so excited. Let's make a real guitar that shoots flames and put it on top of a real giant fucking rolling PA system that puts like 80,000 watts. And let's turn this giant fucking truck into a Rolling Stones concert. A literal Rolling Stones concert. Let's do this shit. Not wanting to piss off or upset George Miller anymore, the design team quickly added strings and pickups to the bass they'd built that shot flames and wired it all up to a wall of speakers they put on top of the Doof Wagon they'd already built.
So who was the guy who actually played the Doof Warrior?
What, you mean the guy who actually got to play this ungodly instrument?
Yeah.
That was an Australian musician called Iota, who was told basically, just shred. Just shred as much as you want, as hard as you want. Here's the button that shoots flames. Just whenever you feel like shooting flames, shoot some flames. Just go nuts.
So they gave him command of the flames?
Yes, they told him just do whatever you want. Because obviously, like I mentioned, all the sound was dubbed in later.
So they put all the audio in afterwards anyway?
Yes, they did.
So what was the point in making the Doof Wagon work?
Because it looked awesome. Also, George Miller said he felt it was important for Iota as a musician to be able to hear the music he was playing, which is a good point. He said, I want the audience at home to know that when they see, like, you know, the Doof Warrior shredding his little war boy heart out on top of this, like, you know, wall of speakers, that he's actually playing a real song. Maybe it's not the music that appeared, like, you know, in the film itself, but in every scene when you see the Doof Warrior playing guitar, he's actually playing a song. So he wanted, like, Iota to really get into the song itself. He says, just play whatever you want to and just go fucking mental, like the Doof Warrior would. Just play it as hard and as fast as you want. We're going to dub it all over anyway. We just want your passion and your energy to come through. Which obviously it's difficult to do if he's not making any noise whatsoever, isn't it?
I hope he just randomly started playing Gay Bar at some point.
Well, the opening, like, well, that's funny, but if you're playing a giant flaming guitar atop a screaming hunk of metal driving through the African desert at 70 miles an hour, there's only one song you can play at that point, and that's like Through the Fire and the Flames. Because I think as well, if you played that while on top of that contraption, I think the gates of Valhalla will just open on its own, and you drive straight through, and you crash into the Great Hall where Odin's there, and you'd be like, yeah, let's get hype, because that's how it's going to go down. You've got one chance, haven't you? I'm not sure what Iota played. I just, to my knowledge, he just played like just riffs and solos and like various crap, but he basically was told just play. It's your energy we want to capture, not the music itself. And that's why they made sure the guitar worked, so he could react to the music he was playing. Yeah. And I've got to admit, that's got to be a pretty fucking extreme experience for a musician, isn't it? Bear in mind as well, the mask he was wearing as the Doof Warrior completely obscured his vision. So he was completely blind, screaming through the desert at like 70 miles an hour, with flames like literally a few feet away from his head, and a wall of sound behind him. Holy shit, man. That's awesome.
Do we know what the guitar actually sounded like in real life?
Oh, it sounded like absolute dog shit. According to Iota, while the guitar did work, it didn't work very well, and it sounded awful coming through those speakers, but he felt that fit with the tone of the movie, because in universe, that guitar is a cobbled together piece of shit made of scrap iron, so it makes sense that it wouldn't sound very good. But I just like that George Miller's like, I don't give a fuck how bad it sounds, make it work, and make it shoot flames. So today, Brad, since we've talked about practical effects in movies, they didn't really need to use practical effects to accomplish, but did so anyway, because fuck it. Do you have any other examples of that you'd like to talk about, or that spring to mind?
The one that immediately comes to mind is from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, the first one.
Oh, I know what you're going to talk about here.
Yeah, the tray catch.
The lunch tray scene. If people don't know, the lunch tray scene in the first Spider-Man movie, Brad, just put the clip in. That was real. Tobey Maguire actually did that, and I think it was accomplished by putting sticky stuff on the tray, and he held it out and it all dropped down and he had to catch it all. And I know this because I think I am the source of this fact online, because I wrote it in a Cracked article about 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 years ago at this point, and when I researched it, it didn't exist anywhere online. I literally, if you go onto my channel on YouTube, the first video I ever uploaded is me recording a DVD director's commentary of Spider-Man with my phone or some shit, where you can hear Kirsten Dunst confirming that it's real. And as far as I'm aware, that's the primary source of this fact everywhere else online.
Yeah, that video's got like 300,000.
That video's got more views than any views on this channel, because whenever like some shit tier website wants to rip off that article on Cracked, they include the source that I used, which is that shitty like video clip of me recording it where Kirsten Dunst says, yeah, Tobey Maguire actually did this stunt for real in real life. That's great. So, but moving on, I think a practical effect that I love is in the film Chronicle. You've watched that? In Chronicle, the trailer bait shot they use for that is the guy, like, it's where kids have psychic powers. Is that the guy crushes a car like this. And that's a real practical effect.
Really?
Yeah, people thought it was CGI. No, they actually got a car, I think they used hydraulics to pull the car inwards. That were activated as the actor did this.
Yeah. And
I believe they might have used CGI to like move him in front of the frame or something like that, but that car is actually being crushed. And same with Christine, the film. It's the same thing they used for Christine, the Stephen King novel that they turned into a film about an evil car, and they filmed the car being crushed and then played the footage in reverse to show it healing itself, and it's a similar thing to that.
Talk about playing footage in reverse. There's that famous one of that actor who couldn't climb on a horse. So they filmed him getting off a horse and rewinded it.
I don't know
I'll
about
put it
that
in the
one.
bottom, but that's a real thing that happened.
No. The only thing I know about reverse footage is if you want to make people walking like zombies look more realistic, tell them to walk like a zombie backwards and then play it in reverse. So they're walking forwards. Then it looks more unnatural and shambolic. So we had to do it for a university video one time. So what you do is you walk like a zombie backwards, and then you play it in reverse, and it looks really unnatural and unsettling.
There's a Weird Al video, I think it might be Amish Paradise, that ends with an entire shot that they did. He basically learned his song in reverse and then walked backwards through the scene, I think. So they play it forwards. It looks like he's walking forwards and everything else moving backwards.
At that point, isn't it? Oh man, that's like an OK Go video at that point, isn't it? You're just showing off. It's like, I got given $200,000 from my production company to make this video. Fuck it, I'm going to use that money.
But if we're going to talk about practical effects, we have to mention American Werewolf in London.
Oh, it's
the transformation sequence.
It'll never be topped.
No.
It's unbelievable. I can't get over how good that effect is. It's the sound as well. I don't even think we can put it in because it's that bad. Maybe we'll put it in for the Halloween videos we're going to do. But Jesus, man, that's brutal.
But on a similar subject, so they got the hair to grow, I think, in that by putting the hair in as the scene went on, or pushing it through a mesh. This is not in any way relevant in that particular. But on Curse of the Were-Rabbit, when Wallace transformed, the way they did the bit of his pants splitting and the fur coming out was they put the fur in bit by bit.
Oh.
So as it played through, it looked like it was coming out, but
That's
what was
amazing.
actually happening was they were adding it.